I've been fighting sinus, chest, junk. It's been winning. So, like now, today, I can't get enough air just into me.
Would you announce that if you have a blanket on Sunday, that they're up front if you need to come get your blanket, because I don't know where they all go.
Hey, if you people are cold, all the blankets that are normally like scattered out amongst the pews and the places where you use them, they're not there this morning. They're all down here. So if you need one, they're down here. That's the announcement that I have this morning. All right, class dismissed. Y'all have a good morning. Thanks for coming. Appreciate all your comments. Had a great time. Learned a lot. Y'all are fantastic. That was a little bit of sarcasm. All right. Well, I sure am glad to see all you fine people. Do you need me to bring you a blanket, Mama Dodie? Are you sure? I'll steal Amanda's and give it to you, and then I'll run. Okay. Well, I sure am glad to see everybody this morning. I think I'm going to pick on somebody to give us an opening prayer. It's probably going to be Stan because he made eye contact with me earlier. That was his fault. Thank you, Stan. All right. So, last week we finished off, we were in Matthew chapter 5. We're almost to 6. We might get to 6 before I finish teaching for this section. All right, so we were in Matthew chapter 5, and we stopped around verse 37, somewhere right around in there. So we're going to back up. We'll go to 33, and we'll go back over that real quickly, just to get us back into the groove of how I hammer y'all with my meanness. All right, so 5:33. Again, you have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but you shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond this is of the evil one. Now, they obviously didn't have hair dye back then. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made this statement. But obviously, nobody in this room would dye their hair. Of course not. The main point being, if you require an oath for your statements to be true or false, then your statements are essentially worthless, right? The same thing, the main point of the heart being, if you require to, if you necessitate standing before a crowd and saying, I swear to God that I love God, then you probably really don't. Because either you're going to say, I love God and live that lifestyle, or you're not. Right? And that's what Jesus is telling them here again, is it is not necessary for you to make this sworn statement for you to say yes and mean yes, or to say no and it mean no. If you need that, that's not a strength of yours. Your faith is weak, and it's from the evil one. All right, carrying on. You have heard, I missed a whole piece there. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat also. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. Now, without putting my foot back on that landmine, this is the section that I was talking about, that some will use to say that I don't care if your husband's beating you or if your wife's beating you, you're going to stay, otherwise you're going to hell. That is what they will use. I told you I was going to end up over here pretty quick. For those of you who are not here often, if I'm leaning on this wall, it's because I'm giving you 100% my opinion, not that. I like to make sure that people know for certain whether I'm speaking from the book or speaking from my opinions. All right, this is my opinion. I don't buy that. Not for 1 second. We went over this all last week. If that was the intent of that passage of Scripture, why would he bother to tell us anything else about divorce or marriage or any of those things? Because if by his own standards, Ephesians, husbands are to treat their wives as Jesus treated the church. If it was okay for them to just wantonly beat them, and we had to, as Christians, just turn the other cheek, ma'ams, you have to turn the other cheek, sirs, you have to just turn the other cheek to a violent spouse. I don't remember Jesus ever doing that to the church. Now, that's why that is also my opinion, because on the great day of judgment, you are not going to be judged on my opinion. You're going to be judged on what God said, just as I am. So that's why I wanted you to know that's my opinion and not Scripture. Okay, pressing on. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little out of breath this morning. I've been fighting some sinus, chest congestion. They gave me a shot in both sides of the tops of the backs of my legs, and it sure did help, but I'm not there yet. Okay. Let's go to an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Turn to him the other also. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Now, under Roman law, a soldier could force a citizen of any nationality that was within a Roman-occupied area to carry their armor. But they were only allowed to force you to carry it for 1 mile. So that's where this comes from. Jesus was well aware of that fact because there were, in fact, Romans when Jesus was alive. I don't know, you may not remember that. Dad does because he remembers seeing them. They had real shiny armor back then, didn't they? I sure do love you, Pop. But they could force you to go 1 mile. What Jesus was saying is, if you're going to be forced to serve your community, serve it well. If you have to be forced to serve your community, serve it well. You do not have to like the person that you are serving in order to serve. You'll remember later on in Jesus' life, he washes some people's feet. Yeah, anybody vaguely remember anything about some foot washing? There was a particular person whose foots he washed, who I would like to think, now this is me back at the wall, my opinion, I would like to think that he probably had maybe not the most excited feelings about that particular person, but he yet still did wash that disciple's feet. I'm talking about Judas. Yeah. But he still washed his feet. So if you're going to have to be forced to serve, serve well. If they say, carry my armor for 1 mile, carry it for 2. Is it going to kill you to carry it for 2? Probably not. I mean, right now, if I had to walk 1 mile, I'd probably die. But that's okay. We as Christians are intended to stand out in our community. In our communities, in our cities, in our states, in our counties, in our nation, in our world. He called us earlier to be the light, right? Don't hide the light. If you are unwilling to serve those who are around you, how much are you stifling your light? Doesn't matter how brightly colored your shirt is. If you're wearing a jacket, nobody see what color it is. If you're living as a Christian at home behind your closed doors, but your neighbor wouldn't have any idea because your lifestyle doesn't exemplify that, then what are you doing? If someone who you don't exactly like needs help and you refuse to help them. Oh, doesn't that sound familiar? I think there might be something about that in the Bible. There was like a parable that Jesus said one time. There's a good Samaritan, and there was a Levite that came by who was, he was a Levite of the priestly tribe, and nope, I'm not doing that. And then, there was another guy, and nope, I'm not doing that. And then there was a guy who, he's not exactly friendly, but he wasn't exactly unfriendly. He was a Samaritan. We know, I'm talking about the Good Samaritan. You guys are with me? All right? Am I being too vague? Okay. That's what Jesus is talking about right here when he says, go with him 2 miles. That Good Samaritan, under no way was he required to help that man. Is that me popping? I don't like that. Under no way was he required to help that man. But yet he did. And not only did he do that, he made sure that not only did he get that man some help, he made sure that he stayed helped. If more is required, I'll pay you when I come back. Right? Not only did he go 1 mile with that man, probably physically carrying him. It doesn't say if he had a donkey or not. But then he also carried him that mile and then made sure that he lived after he got there. So instead of going 1 mile, he went 2. Just like if the Roman soldier said go 1 mile, you should go 2. Have I beat that dead horse? You guys sure are quiet this morning. All right. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemies. That's super easy. Let's just stop there. That makes life much easier. But, Jesus, but I say unto you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven, for he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. I got me one right. Thank you, though. I tell you what I really want is to just not be such a baby and just get over it faster. I wish I was tougher is what I would like. I wish I was like you guys, because y'all have had how many of these infections over your lifetimes, and y'all are still here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to die today. I'm just not tough. Okay. Ooh. So, life would be a lot easier if we weren't required to do this. But we're not, and we're going to have to just do like we're told. Now, so that you may be called sons of the Father. Go back to the Beatitudes. All right, I'm talking about you go back to the Beatitudes. At the end of the Beatitudes, it says, blessed are this because they are that. Which one says sons of the Father? Go look. I will wait. I'm going to force y'all to speak. Peacemaker? Or is there any other ones? I need a Jeopardy like soundboard just. So we've got peacemakers, and what other one? There's not one. Is it just peacemakers? For they shall see God. So none of the other Beatitudes say sons of God. I wonder what the significance of that is. Take peace, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God, and this peace right here that Jesus is talking about, and marry those two together for me. inside of your own brain pans, marry those two together. Why do they say what they say in the way that they say them? If we are called to be Christ-like, we are called to be Christ-like, yes? We are called to be transformed in the image, right? Romans? What did Jesus do? What was his main sole function in coming to this earth? Save the lost. And in order to do that, what did he have to do? He had to mix and mingle with the lost, but what else did he have to do? It's that one thing that you and I can't do. He had to die in order to become peace between us and God. He had to become that perfect sacrifice to propitiate for our sins in order to become peace between God and I. Between God and Mark, between God and Stan, between God and everybody in this room, in this earth. Has been, will be, or is now. Jesus had to become peace between God and I. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. You cannot. Oh, did I cut out? Yep. Oh, I'm stuck. I got you. Thanks, Pop. Could you somehow just yell louder?
That's right, you could.
I got to hold this one way down here. This feels unnatural. I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. Now, if we could love our friends and hate our enemies, what would we be? The same as we were before we were called, right? We would just be humans. We would just be humans. Now, if we love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, what are we doing? The one thing that separates human beings from Jesus. Right? Because how many of us in our own thoughts, in our own human, in our own emotions, in our own opinions, really think, you know what, that guy did me dirty. I hope he has a great day. It's not you. It's not any one of us in this room. That is not our natural reaction to hardship, persecution, pain, suffering, ill will. It's just not. We have to force ourselves to do that. Just like Jesus did. We cannot be peacemakers without that peace. That peace that Jesus made between God and I, and that piece of Scripture right there where we find a way to make peace, where we love our enemies enough to want good things for them despite how they feel about us. You can't be a peacemaker if you don't love your enemy. And you can't be a son of God if you're not a peacemaker. Those are Jesus' words, not mine. I don't even got to go to the wall to say that. I can say that right here. All right. Any questions? Any comments? So, reading on. For he causes the sun to rise on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Interestingly enough, one of his disciples was a tax collector. So it's a little jab there. I don't think he probably didn't intend it that way, but that's the way my mind works. What more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. We have officially made it to chapter 6. Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. I mean, that verse pretty much sums up all of everything that you're ever going to do ever in life from today until the time you go home. If your form of worship is to go and do a thing so that Mark Schubert will go, "Wow, that really is a godly man there," then you've missed the mark. And if my thought process behind teaching this class is to stand up here and say, "Oh, here's these things that I know that you don't know," so that Pat Thomas will come up to me later and go, "Hey man, I didn't know that. I thank you for teaching me," then I've missed the mark. You know, if Pat Thomas is flying that plane in such a manner as to be like, "Nanny, nanny, boo-boo, I can do it and you can't. You should thank me when we get to the ground," then he's missed the mark. Sorry, Pat, I didn't mean to pick on you. You were just there. We picked on the guy in front of you last week, so I figured it was your turn. Everything that we do, and in fact this feels scriptural, maybe it is. Everything we do in word or deed should be done in the name of the Lord. Should be done for His purpose, in His purpose, not ours. If your purpose is any part and portion of why you're doing it because it makes you feel like you are special, you're not actually worshiping Jesus or worshiping God, you're worshiping you.
But if you do something good for somebody that you don't particularly care for, it makes you feel good in your heart.
It should, because you're doing as you've been instructed by Jesus Christ. It should make you feel good, but you shouldn't be doing it because it makes you feel good. You should be doing it because that's what Jesus tells us to. Now, feeling good about it in ourselves is just a byproduct. But if we use that serotonin reaction in our brain as our motivation for worship, then our worship doesn't have any value. If we're using Jesus as our motivation, because Jesus saved me, I'm going to go down to the Muslim mosque and hand out Christian pamphlets. Okay, that's worship. But if my motivation is I'm going down to the Muslim mosque because people are going to think I'm super brave, then that's worthless. Maybe some good could possibly come from it, but between you and the Lord, no good. Between you and the Lord, no good, as we'll see as we continue reading down. So, and this is I don't like this. Jesus said a lot of things that I don't like, but I'm going to do them because He told me to. But if He didn't say certain things, it would be a lot easier. So I'm going to read it to you the way that I want it to be said, and then I'm going to explain to you why it's not that way. So, if you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you that they have their reward in full. But if you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. It's just one little word that would just make things so much easier, right? But Jesus didn't say if. He didn't say, so, if you give to the poor, verse 2. He didn't say, so if you give to the poor. He said, when. When you give to the poor. Do not sound the trumpets, because if you do, you've gotten all you're going to get. Just like we were talking about a minute ago, if I go down to the mosque and I hand out Christian pamphlets because people will think that I'm a super brave Christian, maybe somebody would read one and go, I have questions, possibly. And that could be a good, what's the word I'm looking for? Consequence? Nope, not consequence. A good reaction to something that I did to be seen in front of others, but that's all I'm going to get. Just like when the hypocrites sound the trumpets and say, "Oh, poor, come get your bread. Here I am, come get your bread. I am a benevolent and humanitarian leader. My name is Nero. I'm going to burn the city in a couple of years and blame it on the Christians. But come get your bread today." That actually happened, by the way. And they sound the trumpets. They're going to get everything that they're going to get right then. "Oh, Nero, you're great. Thanks for the bread. You're the best." that's not a spiritual bank chip right there. You know, that has no value between him and the Lord. Just like my worship has no value, as we talked about 2 weeks ago. My worship has no value if I'm partaking in the Lord's Supper when I'm out of step. Remember that? 1 Corinthians. If our heart is not in our worship for Jesus, then our worship is worthless. And I do not want to be found guilty of worthless worship. When you pray, now see, this one's easy. This one I don't mind at all. When you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners so that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your inner room, close the door, pray to your Father who is in secret, and the Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. That one's easy to do. Praying by myself, that one's super easy, and I'm sure none of us struggle with that one. Here's an interesting tidbit. I can get up and I can lead singing. I teach class. I'll do the Sunday morning preaching. I get nervous praying in front of people out loud. I don't know why that is. It doesn't make any sense, because like this, I have no problem doing this. I have no problem doing anything. But praying in front of people makes me nervous. And I don't know why. Man, I feel like I'm doing you guys a disservice today. I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, continuing on, verse 7. And when you are praying, do not use meaningless repetitions as the Gentiles do, for they suppose that they will be heard for their many words. Man. So do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask of him. Now, we're fixing to read through man, oh man, I don't know what's going on here. Oh, that's a great idea, Pappy. Thank you.
If God knows what we need before we ask him, why do we have to ask him?
It's more like, why do we get to?
Why do we get to? Yeah, he told us to ask for it. Is it a matter of obedience? I asked you to do this, therefore you need to do it, even though I know the answer, I know what I'm going to do. But
Yes, and. So yes, he said do it, so you need to do it. That's plain and simple. But, that's the and. Oh, well, if you just assume that Jesus is going to dangle down from heaven and solve your problems, you're missing the mark. But you're exactly right. And that's the point. That is the point that Jesus is making in the sermon here. It's not so much, here's this list of rules for you to follow, you know. He's trying to express to these Jews, because Jesus is a Jew talking to Jews about Jew things. He's trying to express to these Jews that, look, you guys missed the mark on the law. Y'all used the law y'all distorted the law to suit your purposes, and your hearts have turned from me. I'm trying to get you back to the heart of the law, the heart of the man. Yes, Jesus said pray. When you pray, he said pray. But in context of the entirety of the Sermon on the Mount, it just goes without saying. If we are going to live a lifestyle that is in step with what Jesus is talking about, praying is going to be part of our daily thing anyways. If not 2, 10, 15, 20, or 115 times a day. Depending on how often you drive in Austin traffic.
I don't think Jesus told us to pray
Because
because he needs it.
we need it.
Because we need it. Like, we need to have those conversations with him, to draw near to him, to things happen, I think we run risk of attributing those things that happen to other causes.
We run the risk of
Saying,
getting complacent in our relationship with God. And that's the point. That's what Jane was getting to, is that without that prayer, the relationship between you and God doesn't grow. You know, if back over here to the wall. Now, you husbands and wives, how well do y'all get along when you don't talk to one another? Now, and don't give me this sassy answer about, oh, it gets so much better, blah blah blah. And don't tell me your wives are prettier when they're not talking. Even though it may be true, Mom. How well do y'all get along when you're not talking? Oh, okay, I heard somebody answer. I'm going to say the answer, not so well, right? Okay, thank you. I was going to wait all day. I love it. You don't get along very well when you're not talking. You definitely, and you know, when y'all were dating back in the mid-'80s, when y'all were dating, I bet y'all spent a lot of time talking on the phone. You know, it used to be attached to the wall. We had a cord on it, and you know, y'all would go in the closet and close the door, and the little cord hanging out the back. Y'all just talking on the phone. Yeah, it didn't ever happen, right?
15 minutes perfectly on the phone. So no, we did not talk on the phone.
Shh. Okay, maybe I do like this, because I can do a lot more with this than I can do with the other one. But that's the idea is, how did you grow that relationship where you decided, this is the lady who I may be interested in, or, you know, vice versa, a fellow that I may be interested into. This is a man that I love. Or this is a woman that I love. Or this is a person that I'm going to marry. This is the person that I'm going to fight all of my life's fights with. And I don't mean with one another, I mean the fights of life, you know, just getting through it, you know. How do you think that relationship grew into what it is now? I mean, for goodness sake, there's some folks in this room been married for like 60 years back there. Talking, and then more talking, and then probably maybe a little bit of arguing. You know, I think if you never ever argued, you didn't have a strong enough opinion. Right? Well, that's my opinion. That's what prayer is. Prayer is your conversation with God. Now, is He dangling down and answering your questions face to face? No, He's not. And if He is, I suggest that you take a nap and calm down, because you're hallucinating. But that conversation, that prayer is a conversation that grows and deepens your relationship. How you know, I know, 100%, I know for a fact that God is going to take care of me. I know for a fact that God is going to allow me into heaven. I know for a fact that I am a saved individual. But sometimes I still get scared. Sometimes I still have worries. Sometimes I still have doubts. And guess what? Talking to God, prayer is how you alleviate those things. Just like Holly said, it's not that Jesus needed you to pray to Him, it's that you need it. So that you can reaffirm to yourself what you need, because God already knows. And He's got a plan in place for it. But the caveat to that is, you absolutely must, as an obedient Christian, be open to the idea that it may not look like what you think it should look like. I can pray for money, and maybe God will give me some. Maybe He won't. You can pray for health, and maybe God will give you some. But maybe He won't. As obedient Christians, we need to pray to better understand our situation between ourselves and God, and to better understand the will of God. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how faithful I am, just because that thing is spicy. No matter how faithful I am, and I'm sweating now. No matter how faithful, all right, focus. No matter how faithful I am, I may not get what I want. And I have to be okay with that as a Christian. Because if I'm not okay with not getting what I want from God, then am I a Christian or am I an 8-ball Christian?
You have to accept God's will.
God's will is supreme.
Not your will.
Wait, so right here in this prayer that I never did actually end up getting read out loud, your will as it is in heaven? Your will? Does it say my will? Did Jesus right here in this prayer, did he say my will? No, he said your will. God's will. We have to absolutely understand and be okay with God's will being supreme over our wants, desires, opinions, thoughts. We may have some really good ideas. I have a really great idea. No Christian will ever die of cancer or sickness or anything painful. That's a great idea. Tell me that it's not a good idea. Who disagrees? Who thinks that Christians should die of those things? Of course. That's not going to be the case, though, is it? That doesn't fit into the will of God. Now, but that's a great idea. And I think that, that should be something. That should be a thing. And I'm a pretty faithful Christian. So how come I'm not getting that? Because God's will is supreme over mine. And I have to be okay with the fact that I may not like it, I may not understand it, but I absolutely must respect it.
The sooner you accept God's will, the happier you're going to be.
I don't think anybody has said a more true statement ever than that. The faster that you can accept God's will, the happier you will be. I mean, I don't think anything else can top that. Let's move on. Yeah, why didn't you say that from the very beginning? All right. You know what? I'm going to do something I never ever do. I'm just going to stop right there. We only got 3 minutes left. My nose is all plugged up, and I got to go do stuff across the street. So why don't we just stop there this week, and we'll pick back up at 16 next week. And we'll talk about fasting as I go across the street to make sure that this gigantic meal is made. All right, I love you people. Thank you for putting up with me this morning.
I didn't give him anything. It's one of those really strong ones that I don't eat. It does. But then you go, yes. It's just, I guess it's been Yes, yes, it does. It does. Yes, yeah, well, you know, comes and goes. Yeah. Maryland wasn't there. You're right. Yeah. And a mom and a mom. Yeah. Yeah. And it was originally
It's on. Thank you.
So one.